This is the Mop Up Med podcast. My name's Justin Trinity. Along with me is co-host Kenny Baseball. How you doing, Kenny?
I'm good. How you doing, Justin?
Pretty good. I'd be better if the Yankees had done a little bit better in the postseason and not just lost in the first game to the Red Sox. But before we kick things off, this podcast is not sponsored by anybody. So if you would like to sponsor this podcast, reach out in the comments. No one's funding this. And, we'd like to sponsor it at some point. So there's the plug. Let's get rolling here. Let's talk Yankees offseason moves. Aaron Boone got re-signed, kind of the coaching staff situation. Nevin is gone. A couple other coaches are gone. That's kind of old news at this point. We're now middle of November. So we're not going to get into, whether Boone was the right fit or not, because he's the fit. All right. He just signed a 3 or 4 year extension. And I believe he got a sizable raise. So we're not going to talk about coaches. We'll talk about player personnel on the field. And obviously the Yankees have a gaping hole at shortstop. Gleyber Torres, we talked about it last offseason. It was kind of the question of, is he really going to be able to make it at shortstop? Does he have the range? Is he going to be consistent enough with the glove? You're kind of sacrificing glove for his bat. And then, of course, he played a pretty mediocre shortstop and ended up being okay at second. And he hit a grand total of 9 home runs. So you're not going to make that, defense for offense trade when you've got a guy who hits 259 with 9 home runs. Like, he's going to play second base. Yeah. The Yankees need to fill a spot at shortstop. And right now, with Velazquez getting picked up by the Angels, the Yankees' only shortstop right now is Tyler Wade. And they're not going to start the season with Tyler Wade. And Gio Urshela, he's not really a shortstop. I think he's barely a third baseman. He's kind of a league average third baseman at this point. So there's big shortstops on the market. Kenny, do any of them jump out to you as like, this is the guy the Yankees have got to get? And are there anybody out there that you're like, I know they're a big name, but like we need to avoid this player or these players?
Yeah, I feel like right now it's between Corey Seager and Carlos Correa. And I feel like Brian Cashman has made it clear he's going to go after one of those two guys. And there's probably a pretty good chance they'll get one of those two. I originally, it sounded like Seager was going to be the guy that they were definitely going to get. And then over the last 3 weeks to a month, it's starting to seem like Correa's in the front, their front guy now. It's a little bit of the weird mix with Correa just because of, obviously he was on the Astros before. And he's mixed up in that whole cheating thing. Yankee fans hate Carlos Correa, but Cashman already pretty much came out and said he doesn't even care what Yankee fans think. His job is to actually find the best talent. So, we'll see what ends up happening with that. In terms of fit, it's obviously nice having Seager's left-handed bat, but I think we were talking about this previously. You're probably going to sign him to a 7-year deal, and he's not realistically a shortstop for the next 7 years, maybe for a few more years. And maybe that would work out because then you bring in one of the young shortstops up after 2 or 3 years, and then he would move over to third. I don't know if that's what they have in their plans, but obviously Correa is a better defender. He's probably even a better hitter, and they have their injury problems, both of them, but I think that Correa is a little bit more durable than Seager's been. He's probably not that far in front of him in terms of durability, but that's kind of it seems like it's a mixed right now with 60-40 Correa favored.
Yeah, I don't think that either guy is a slam dunk. Like the Yankees have to go out and get Seager or get Correa. It's not like the Garrett Cole situation where it was you have to get this guy. If you don't get this guy, you're going to have a major problem in the postseason. This is no doubt about it. You have to get this player. I don't really think either Correa or Seager it fits in that category because obviously Seager, yeah, he's a good shortstop defensively, but he's probably going to have to move over to third and maybe at first by the end of the deal. And, he is lefty, but he's pretty injury prone. Are you getting a guy that's only going to be on the field for 100 to 130 games a season? Is that worth spending close to $30 million a year for that guy? And then Correa is a phenomenal shortstop defensively, but he's right-handed. He's had some injury problems in the past, and he's been more durable as of late. But again, is that a guy that you want to sink $30 million a year into? So, I'm not going to complain if they get either guy. I'm not going to say it was a bad move right away. You know, and I'll probably convince myself that, you know, Correa or Seager, whoever the Yankees get, if they get one of those guys, is going to be that's the move. That's going to be, you know, what they should be doing. But I also don't love the idea of just waiting for the young shortstops, because how often they have two of them. How often does a top prospect come up and they're actually that superstar? I feel like it doesn't
Not
happen
very often.
not that often. And I mean, Peraza is supposedly, you know, a MLB ready defensive shortstop right now. You know, that's encouraging, but is he going to hit? I mean, Tyler Wade is an MLB ready defensive shortstop right now, and you don't play him. Like, is Peraza going to come up here and hit 230 with 9 home runs next year? Or in 2 years, he could be just a light hitting, really good defensive shortstop. And Volpe, from what I've heard from a number of different sources, is that he's not going to be necessarily a guy that absolutely sticks at shortstop. So is he going to be the next Gleyber Torres, where they kind of putz around what they're going to do for the next few years with him, move him around the infield, and then determine, well, you know, he's really a third baseman, or he's really a second baseman?
Yeah,
And
plus he's further out. He's like 3 or 4 years, it seems like.
he hasn't seen Double A yet. I think Peraza's seen Double A. You know, Torres, he's one of those guys. He was a can't miss prospect. He was not like a highly touted prospect. He was like a top 5, top 3, like, this guy's going to be a star type guy. And, you know, he's kind of been a mixed bag, you know, especially the last couple of years. He's been a bad player. I mean, there's kind of no way around that. And he was another guy who he was looked at as a plus defensive shortstop, and he's 25 years old and he can't play shortstop. He's not good enough to. So
and he doesn't even hit as well when he's a shortstop. He did so much better even at the plate when he was a second baseman. So it kind of plays into that as well.
Absolutely. 2019, he was at second base because they had Didi Gregorius. So you know, I don't love that idea either. And I would be kind of disappointed if the Yankees went out and got like a stopgap Andrelton Simmons type, where it's like the guy's going to hit 220 with 7 home runs. He's going to be an elite defensive shortstop, but like, he's pretty much going to be an automatic out in a lineup that's not all that deep to begin with. So I don't love that sacrifice either. So I don't know if there's anybody else that you think would be a better fit, or is it going to be one of those things where the Yankees they kind of punt at shortstop and they go out and they get a big time center fielder or a big time first baseman, and that kind of like counteracts that a little bit, where you put a stopgap at shortstop, but you've upgraded so much in a couple other positions where you kind of forget about shortstop.
Yeah, I feel like they should just go for one of the top guys this year. And the year to do the stopgap thing would have been last year, where they could have done like the Simeon thing, or I can't remember if there were other names available that they could have gone for 1 year.
Like Iglesias, Jose Iglesias.
Yeah, like something. Yeah, and I feel like the real guy was like Simeon that you could do that with, because he actually has a nice bat, and obviously he did a lot better than you would think he would do last year. But this is like the year where you have an opportunity to get somebody that'll be a shortstop for like next 7 years or so, 5 to 7 years, or even like if you're looking to have a stopgap, I guess Seager would be more the guy, because he's gonna, like we were saying, like 3 years at short, and then he could slide over if somebody else is better than him, or if he can't do it anymore defensively. So I just think that you got to go for one of those two guys. That's what I think. And then like I guess outside of that, there's Trevor Story, but he's probably like a far out third. I don't know how interested the Yankees really are in him. What are your thoughts on him?
I think he's a better player than people give him credit for. I think people say, well, he's in Colorado, so of course he's going to put up big numbers. I do think he's a better player than that. The thing I don't like about Story is he's kind of a very similar player to a lot of the guys the Yankees already have, in that he strikes out a lot and he's right-handed. Like the Yankees have a lot of guys who are right-handed and strike out a lot. Like, you know, I don't love that as the fit. But I mean, if the Yankees got a deal on him, I wouldn't complain. Like, I'm not going to complain with any of those big shortstops. He kind of reminds me of like that Javi Baez type, a little bit less extreme maybe, but like the guy's going to strike out a lot. You already have a ton of strikeouts in your lineup.
Yeah. And I guess like one last thing that to factor into everything is you have Seager and Correa, who have both been on championship teams, and they've both also done very well in the postseason. And I think that Correa has also shown that he's kind of like a leader, and he's very good at like really pumping up the team and stuff. I remember last year against the Rays when I think it was Diaz or whatever, which is Yandy Diaz.
Yandy Diaz.
Yeah, Yandy Diaz, and he was yelling at Valdez, and then Correa came over and started yelling in Valdez's ear. He got out of the jam. Like that's the kind of thing that Correa does. I think he would be good for the clubhouse, just like bringing a championship guy in there. And Seager's the same way. I mean, he won NLCS MVP. So
yeah, I think he was World Series MVP too in 2020.
Oh, did he win both of them?
Yeah, I mean, granted, that's a Mickey Mouse World Championship,
Yeah.
but we won't get into that. We don't need Dodgers fans hating us. Although I don't really care. Yeah, I could kind of go either way. Just to wrap up the shortstop stuff, I could kind of go either way in a lot of the different moves. There's not anything that I'm like dead set on. I would convince myself, no matter what the Yankees did at shortstop, that it was probably the right move, unless it's Simmons, unless it's somebody like that.
Yeah.
But talking about some of the other positions of interest, first base and center field, do you have a handle on what the Yankees might do there? Do you have a kind of sense of anything?
I feel like there's a very good chance the Yankees trade for Matt Olson at first base. I think that's like something a lot of people expect them to do, from writers to fans to even the Yankees front office. I think they're all like pretty in on that. And it's going to be about what the price is and how many suitors there are, if they're going to be bidding against themselves. So I think that'll happen eventually.
Would you unload some players for Olson?
Yeah, I would do that because he has control left. He's a lefty, and he would be great for their lineup. And they need a first baseman like that also. If you can attach a pitcher in there also, that would probably cost a lot. But if they can also get a starting pitcher in that would be awesome.
Yeah, the A's have some starting pitchers that are available. Sean Manaea, Chris Bassett, Frankie Montas. Like they've got good, number 3 starters that would fit into a lot of rotations that they could tack onto a deal and get a couple extra prospects out of. But yeah. I totally agree. I love Matt Olson. I think he's perfect for Yankee Stadium. He strikes out a little bit, but he hits for average, and he plays a really good defensive first base. Plus he's young. Like he could hit 50 home runs at Yankee Stadium. I wouldn't be surprised by that. And yeah, you probably would have to give up. I mean, you'd at least have to give up one of their top 3 guys, Volpe, Peraza, or Dominguez.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you attach the pitcher, you probably have to give up 2 guys.
Right.
I don't know if you could get away with like Peraza and Luis Gil as like the 2 big guys, but it would, yeah, you're right. It would kind of
Medina or something like that, like Luis Medina.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you started to get into those kind of guys, it would kind of have to be similar to the Joey Gallo deal, where you have to give up like a lot of those kind of guys.
Yeah,
like a lot of like, decent prospects, where you're not giving up like your top guys, but you're giving up like a ton of, reasonable prospects. So right. I would do that. The A's basically said everyone's available. So you can just go up and down their roster and say like, okay, well, the Yankees need a center fielder. So what about Laureano? The Yankees need a catcher. What about Sean Murphy? Like, I obviously Olson is a really good fit, but is there like another guy on that team that the Yankees end up getting in that trade?
I guess Murphy would be the guy that you think of, because they're looking to replace Sanchez as starting catcher. Murphy hasn't really shown that he's necessarily too much better than Sanchez at the plate. He's a better defender. I don't know. I'm not I don't know too much about him behind the plate, Murphy.
I think he won the Gold Glove this year.
Oh, did he actually?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty big for to get some, they might look to upgrade right there, but I don't know if that's something that if they think that he's the kind of guy that they should give all those extra prospects for to replace Sanchez, but you never know. That could be the one guy there.
I think he would be relatively expensive. We're kind of in an era where there aren't really any good catchers at all. I don't want to bash JT Realmuto, but we're in an era where he's the best catcher in baseball. That's not a knock on him, but we came off an era where you had Mike Piazza, Joe Mauer, Ivan Rodriguez, Jorge Posada, Victor Martinez was a really good offensive catcher. Like you had a lot of really good hitting catchers. Like Yadier Molina was like the fourth best catcher in the league. And everyone's like ready to like crown him as the greatest living player alive or whatever. Like, I mean, we're kind of in an era where there's not like, if your catcher is a good defensive catcher and like isn't an automatic out, like you're good. So
Yeah, that's true. That really is true.
So we'll kind of like, I think the Yankees would move on from Gary Sanchez if they had somebody to replace him with. Like, I really don't think that they're thinking like, oh, well, you know, we're still big believers in Gary. Gary's not good. Like he's not. No one wants to throw to him.
Yeah, that's true. And
he's a
especially
200
with Garrett Cole.
He's a 200.
Like, yeah, the whole thing that you've seen with Garrett Cole not wanting to throw to him and taking his bat out of the lineup, then you need Higgy to start in the big games and stuff. It's just a situation that the Yankees just don't want, and they're ready to move on now.
Yeah, and you know, I know some people aren't big on like the whole personal catcher thing, where it's like, oh, you know, that shouldn't matter and stuff. Well, whether it does or not, like if your pitchers don't want to throw to a guy, like that's kind of a problem. Like whether they're justified in it or not, but like your $36 million a year pitcher is like, I won't throw to him. Like,
yeah, that is a problem, and it became a problem instantly in like this year. For sure. And even last year a little bit in the postseason, but Higgy hit pretty well in the postseason last year. So
I mean, Higgy's not a terrible offensive player. He will hit one out every once in a while, but he's gonna hit 180.
Yeah, he's a good backup catcher. He's like kind of like Austin Romine. It's like a very reliable backup catcher. It's like that's like a luxury to have, is to have somebody like that. But you don't want him to like be forced. Yeah, you don't want him to be forced into being the starter on your team.
And that's the other thing, kind of going back to the whole shortstop thing. Like if you've got a catcher who can't hit, and now you have a shortstop who can't hit, like that hurts your lineup. You don't have a deep lineup if you're only, 1 through 7.
Yeah. So, and with regards to like, this is kind of going a little off topic, but with regards to like center fielders, like, do you think they would actually look to go after like Liriano and for the A's? I haven't really heard that too much, anything like that. But what do you think about that?
I haven't heard that either. I looked at the A's roster because they said everybody's on the block.
Yeah.
He's a really good defensive center fielder. I mean, he's coming off the PED things, but I'm pretty sure he'll probably be able to still run things down in center. I've heard Starling Marte. I've heard Ketel Marte. Obviously, I've heard Brian Reynolds, which would be insane. And that's the other thing. And Buxton, but
he's like Hicks almost. He's always hurt.
He's like if Hicks was an MVP candidate.
Right.
Like you're going to get like the best player in the world for 40 games and then that's it.
Yeah. And I think Cashman is like finally to the point where he's like fed up with guys that get hurt too much. So I really don't think he's going to go after Buxton as hard as some people might think, because he's tired of that. He's trying to replace Voit and Hicks because of that exact problem. So he's not going to try and get somebody else that's also historically always hurt.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, you bringing up center field. If you have a catcher who can't hit, a shortstop who can't hit, and then you have Aaron Hicks playing center field. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're just gonna even if you have Sean Murphy.
Justin, I think your microphone just turned off or it cut out or something there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, just cut out for a second there.
All right. Just quickly, the point that I was trying to make was if you have Hicks, a catcher who can't hit, and a shortstop who is a defense only guy, that's not a good lineup for the Yankees to have.
Yeah, and they're looking to improve on all of that. I think like it's like you were saying previously, they're going to try and replace all those positions with like all-star caliber kind of guys. And
well, they better.
Yeah,
if they don't, they're at best going to be a 90-win team. Seriously.
It's going to be like what they were like the last 3-4 years, basically, for the most part, where it's just you're constantly like waiting for that year where it's just your year, and then they haven't been the team yet that's like the best team in the league in any of these seasons. It's not like they need to try and make sure they're the number one team heading into the season, whatever way they have to do it. Like kind of like what the Dodgers have done the last 4 years, pretty much 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, you can go into a season where you're like, there's a good chance we'll make the playoffs. We make the playoffs, we could make a run. That's what the Braves did this year. The Braves are not the best team in the league, but they made a run. They're a good team. They won their division. Kind of the chips fell the right way, and they won the World Series. The Nationals in 2019 were that way too. And then you can kind of look at teams where it's like, yeah, that team was going to win. Like the 09 Yankees, the 2016 Cubs, the 2018 Red Sox. Like they put players on the field that were like, these guys are just better. Like,
and that was like
Yankees
the 2019 Astros too.
The 2017 Astros. I mean, they cheated, but you can't bring. Like, I'm never gonna bring them up without mentioning that they cheated. They deserve it. They cheated. But yeah, no, they were that team. But like, with the Red Sox in like 2018, you know, the Yankees won 100 games. The Yankees were a really good team that year. The Red Sox were on another level. And that's kind of what the Yankees were like chasing. I feel like in this last sort of run that they've had since 2017, like they've wanted to be that team where like they're the 16 Cubs, the 09 Yankees, the 2018 Red Sox, like every year.
They thought that was them. They thought that was themselves in 2018 when they got Stanton.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't really like that. It just
they were
didn't really work out.
They were a good team in 2018 and 2019. Like they were a really good team, but they were not the best team.
Yeah, they weren't the best team. And I don't know if anybody really expected the Red Sox to be as good as they were in 2018 either. It just it really developed that way once the season started.
Yeah, I think they were a team where like they were really good on paper. Like they were a team that I was like, yeah, they'll win 95 games. And then they won 108. It was kind of like they really did exceed expectations. I mean, if you look at their lineup, JD Martinez had a career year. Mookie Betts had a career. Like they just had guys up and down the lineup that had career years. And then their starting pitchers, like David Price was good. Like he stinks. And like that one year he was really good. So I think it was kind of that with the Red Sox where they were a really good team that overperformed. Whereas like you see a lot of other teams that are, you know, like the Braves, like they didn't overperform until the end of the year. Like the Red Sox were just overperforming the whole year and they just steamrolled teams. They were just the best team. You know, but kind of going back to the Yankees and, you know, just talking about where they went wrong the last 4 years, because 17, I kind of look back at that fondly as like the team that was kind of like an upstart team. You didn't expect them to be good. And then, you know, they get to game 7 of the ALCS and they lose to the cheaters. So it's kind of hard to say like, oh yeah, that, you know, they got, they didn't meet expectations that year, but 18, 19, 20, 21, I would look at as complete failures.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, like 2017, I thought was the start of a dynasty pretty much. I was almost comparing it to like what 95 was until obviously they lost. And then once they get Stanton, you think they're just going to start rolling after that. And it just never really worked out like that. There were always teams that were better than them. And in the postseason, it's kind of the same story every year where they come out hot in the beginning, except for this year, obviously. They'll come out very hot in the beginning. You think it's coming together. And then the bats just turned silent in like whatever round they ended up losing in. So in like 2018, the bats turned off after the wild card game. After game 2, the bats basically turned off in the last few games of the series. Then 2019, kind of the same. They steamrolled the Twins. And then it was kind of like bats fell asleep again. And then 2020, the same thing. The bats fell asleep after game 2. And then this year, it was just a train wreck. And the whole season was kind of a mess this year. It was kind of like you knew they had to start mixing something up because it just the team wasn't really like meshing the way that you would like it to, or even if they say they were, it was like there was something going on there that they just never really meshed.
This team kind of reminded me. So the 18, 19, 20 Yankees kind of reminded me of like those post 2003 teams that the Yankees had, where it was like, they're going to score a lot of runs in the regular season, but they just don't have enough to kind of overcome the flaws on their team, which is not having dominant starting pitching, and not having enough guys who are just good hitters that can hit good pitching. That was kind of the flaws in the like 04 to 08 Yankees. And I saw a lot of that with those teams that the Yankees recently had. And then 2021 kind of reminded me of those like 2013 to 2016 Yankees, where they're kind of a middling team. They show signs of life, but at the end of the day, their flaws really kind of, you know, show up in big spots. And I think we were very lucky that they even made the playoffs. projected win-loss based on their runs scored and runs allowed was like they were supposed to be like an 86 win team, which is kind of what the 2013, 14, 15 Yankees were. They were not like the Braves where they kind of underperformed, but they had the right pieces to win. I don't think the Yankees really had the right pieces to win. And then playing in the wild card game at Fenway with your best pitcher, but he was struggling the past couple of weeks. He was not the same guy. It just wasn't. I don't think it was a recipe for a postseason run. And then the last thing I'll say about the 20 Yankees is, their biggest problem was not that Garrett Cole blew it in the wild card game. Their problem was that they were in the wild card game.
Yeah, that is, and especially beyond the road in the wild card game, it was like they gave themselves a very difficult hand. They drew it wasn't even like, it was just like they put themselves in that spot. You can't go to Fenway for a wild card game and expect to win it. Almost, it's like very difficult to win a game like that because the Red Sox are very tough to beat at home, just like the Yankees are tough to beat at home in big games. So
yeah, I think if the Yankees played that game at Yankee Stadium, I think they probably win.
Yeah, completely different game.
The home field advantage for both teams is so stark. I mean, nobody that was like what people were saying, and this is kind of getting a little bit off topic, but like there was no way the Rays were winning a game in Fenway Park. Those young players who play in front of no fans all the time, who a lot of their postseason exposure, like in the World Series, was not in front of any fans in 2020. Like, you're going to go to Fenway Park and win? You're going to put those rookies on the mound who've never pitched in a big game in their life in front of fans? Those Red Sox fans are nuts. Okay? They're like Yankee fans. They're crazy. Like,
yeah,
you're going to put McClanahan on the mound at Fenway Park and expect that he's going to do well? No, they're going to be chanting his name before he even gets on the mound.
yeah.
I mean, Jay Happ, who's a veteran pitcher, who's pitched in World Series games before, was shaken.
Yeah, he was actually shaking. And I actually am guilty for that because I think that I assumed that the Rays were kind of just like this robotic team that wouldn't get really impacted by that. And I thought, well, one guy's too nervous, bring in the other guy as like a replica of the guy before. So I didn't think it would impact them. And so like I now that like after the fact, it makes a lot of sense. Like last year they made their run with basically no fans in the stands the whole time. And this year they ran into Fenway and they just got trounced in those games. And the pitchers didn't pitch as well anymore. And what you're saying is very true.
Yeah, and then you get the Astros that go in there. They're used to hostile environment.
Yeah.
I mean, Carlos Correa and Jose Altuve played games at Yankee Stadium this year. Like they've dealt with hostile crowds. That's not going to affect them as much. They've been in the postseason. This isn't their first rodeo. So It didn't surprise me that those guys were getting big hits at Fenway. But yeah, no, the Rays, they had no chance. And yeah, home field advantage is I think the team with home field advantage in that wild card game was going to win the game between the Yankees and Red Sox. And, obviously they should not have been in that game. They should have. I mean, the idea that the Rays win more games than you, that should never happen, ever. The Rays spend no money. They have a $40 million payroll or whatever it is. Like that's unacceptable. You can't have that.
Yeah, it's just a brutal year all around. Just so bad, so inconsistent. I think it was just very frustrating all around, like all season, because you wanted to have hope that they were actually good because you have good names in the roster, good bats. And the pitching was overperforming all year, or just pitching very well. I don't know if they were necessarily overperforming, but they pitched like very well all year. And the bats were just so inconsistent. Like they didn't even have, until the end of the year, they didn't have anybody even near 100 RBIs. And I know that's not even like that big of a deal, RBIs, but it shows that you don't really have guys driving in runs consistently throughout the year. And Judge and Stanton ended up below 100, which is unusual. Usually you at least have one guy that gets like 100 RBIs in a season. So it just goes to show like they didn't really have consistent offense all season, which just wasn't great.
Yeah, especially if Judge and Stanton are playing as much as they did. They played 130, 140 games. Like you expect them to have 100 RBIs. I think they came up just short. But yeah, I mean, the offense was brutal. Gleyber Torres hit 9 home runs this year. Like that's so
bad. And LeMay was not great either. Yeah, it just didn't work out. And Sanchez is very inconsistent all year also. He had like a few stretches, but he wasn't great. Gallow stunk when he joined the team.
Gallow.
Center
Oh
field
my
is a
gosh.
problem.
We went 40 minutes of this podcast without mentioning Joey Gallo. I could have an entire podcast talking about how bad Joey Gallo is. He's the worst baseball player I've ever seen in my entire life.
Like he's an interesting guy, but I think give him a full season. I don't know if he's not good for New York or what, but his numbers were so much worse than they normally were in his career.
True. He hit 160 for the Yankees or whatever.
But what you see is also what you get at the same time. It's not like some of those strikeouts will turn into home runs, but he's still going to basically be that same hitter that we saw this year. So that's what he's going to be for the most part. And hopefully his defense will get better also. I mean, he won Gold Glove, but it was a little bit of a mess out there in left field for him. Yeah, at times.
It was a bit of an adventure for Gallo. I mean, I don't want to just completely knock Gallo. I mean, I called him the worst baseball player I've ever seen. But I feel like it was more that I didn't want him for this team. Like, I think he fits better on other teams and other lineups where not every guy in the lineup's vice is that they strike out every game.
Yeah, that's true.
We brought in another guy who they're really good, but they strike out a lot. It's like all of our players do that. Literally all of them strike out a ton. So it's like, why did we get another guy like that? That didn't make any sense. And the whole idea where they're like, oh, well, he doesn't hit into double plays. It's like, yeah, he also doesn't hit sac flies either.
And then he did hit into double plays when he joined the team.
I know he hit 3 in the first week, and it's like, of course it's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's so brutal.
But he doesn't. He hits home runs, he strikes out, and he walks, and that's it. He does not do anything else.
And, that actually is it.
And yeah, I guess he's an athletic. He's athletic. He plays all 3 outfield positions and first base. So I mean, he's versatile, but he's not a fit for this team, I don't think. Other than the fact that he's left-handed, I don't think he's a good fit. I think he's a good guy. I think I'm looking. I'm grasping for straws. He's a nice guy.
Very fidgety though.
Remember the game we went to? I was watching him in the on deck circle. I'm like, this guy doesn't stop moving. He's constantly moving around. I'm like, this guy.
And the faces he makes, and he always has those wide eyes, where he's looking around, it's almost like what Adam Gase was for the Jets head coach. It looks like he's on cocaine or something when you just look at his eyes. That's kind of, he's just he seemed awkward when he was. I don't know if he was always like that on the Rangers, but he seems a little awkward on the Yankees.
Yeah, and I mean, look, if that if he put up numbers, I wouldn't care. I think on Sabathia's podcast, he was talking about some of the weird things that you just don't know about. He's like, Clemens would change his jersey every inning.
Oh,
and
yeah.
If Clemens was terrible, you'd be like, that's why he sucks, because he does stuff.
He's just crazy.
Sabathia started doing that too, and now then Tanaka started doing it, and Pettit was doing it became a thing. And if Sabathia pitched an inning and gave up a run, he'd get a different hat. If Sabathia stunk his first year and it came out that he was doing all these quirky things, you'd be like, see, he's not fit for New York. Can't play here. He's a weirdo, So
yeah.
I don't want to just be like, oh, well, the way he looks when he hits, that's why he stinks,
Yeah.
So I feel like you can kind of get caught up into that, but I think they got to trade him. Other than I don't care that he hit 160. I didn't want him before they got him. But I didn't want Gallo before the Yankees even got him, because of the type of player he is. And I just think you have too many of that. A-Rod will talk about that. He'll be like, building a team's like building a house. You don't want 4 garages and no bathrooms. And I feel like the Yankees just added another garage.
Yeah. And I'm all for keeping him for this extra season, for his last season on his contract, just to see how he does.
So you want him.
I want to keep him in there. Yeah. And I think it would help a lot if you add in some more guys, add in Seager, Correa, and get a center fielder that's going to be a productive bat. That's not going to be the same thing as with Gallo and striking out too much and all that. Try and mix up the lineup a little bit. And then I think he'll fit a little bit better then, but he is a lefty bat and he's better than he produced this year. And I think that you got to give him that one extra year, because it was just a few months. And Cashman, I think, has too much pride just to trade him away just like that. He's going to be
Sonny Gray. They did it with Sonny Gray.
But they still let him go his extra season after that. So he had a year and a half also, and then, or I think he had more years of control, but he pitched that half season and then he pitched that full season. And that full season, he really stunk. And that's when the Yankees are like, yeah, it's not going to work out. I think if Gallo does the same thing that he did last season, obviously, like they're not going to re-sign him. And if he's really bad in the first half, who knows? Maybe they'll look to move him at the trade deadline. But I think that they're going to give him this extra year just because they want to see what he's like when he has more time, like more time in pinstripes.
Yeah, I mean, I would be okay moving on with him now because I just think that we tried it, didn't work out, and we need to, trade him back to the Rangers for half the prospects we gave to them.
If they can get good value for him, I mean, I'm not against the trade, like trading him if they can get something that's valuable to them. Like it's not just like dumping him off. Then you got to field it out, like see what you can get for him pretty much. If you can get something nice for him that'll help the team now, I'm fine moving him then. But I think that they're most likely they're just going to keep him.
So you wouldn't trade him for like, you wouldn't trade him for like a relief pitcher, because I think that that would be a deal where you could get like maybe a setup man quality guy.
I don't know if I would do that actually, because I think you can kind of do what the Yankees did this year, where you can find somebody that will just slide, like Clay Holmes, for example. Like they have good, like they're a better pitcher than they were pitching, and you can kind of get a bargain deal on them, and then they can become better when they join the team. Because relief pitchers are very hit or miss, especially when they switch teams. So I don't know if I'm really all for trading Gallo to get a relief pitcher, unless he's like a top flight,
like a Chad Green type guy, like somebody who's got a a record of being a pretty good high leverage reliever. Like I think that would be or maybe like a number 4 starter, a guy who can give you 150 innings, with a 4 ERA or something like that. Would you deal Gallo for that? Where you're not going to trade Gallo for prospects. Like,
yeah, they're not going to do that.
They're not going to do.
I don't know if I would, for a guy that would throw 150 innings and have a 4 ERA. I don't know if I'm really all about that, really, because they already have a lot of depth guys like that.
They do.
I mean, maybe not as good as that, but they're around that level.
Like a Tyone type. Like if you get 1 year of Tyone, would you trade Gallo for that?
I wouldn't do that personally, because I think that you can get more production out of Gallo than you saw last year. And I already think they have a lot of, especially if they add, like, say they add, it depends what other moves they make. Like if they get like a guy like Minaya also, then I don't really see that really being as valuable to them, because you already have like 2 guys in the back end, like say Herman or like Tyone, who'll be like the 4 or 5 guys or 5 guys. Like you have guys that are like battling it out for the 5th spot already. So I don't know if adding another guy like Tyone really would be that valuable, even though you could always add more starting pitching. So it's not like that's terrible, but I don't think giving away Gallo for that is really worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. I would make those moves. But I don't think that that's a secret.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's definitely one of the most, like, I mean, not as much as Sanchez, but he's definitely one of the most like polarizing players in their team right now.
I'll give it to him that he's a good fielder. I'll give him that. He was kind of learning a little bit of a new position. He was a right fielder with the Rangers, I think, and then the Yankees put him in left field, and field at Yankee Stadium is not the easiest position to play. Granted, he dropped the pop-up at Fenway Park, so there's that. But I think overall he was a good defensive outfielder. I just didn't like the fit for the team. But kind of moving on a little bit and talking a little bit about Cashman and the moves he's going to make. You're kind of in Cashman we trust guy. You'll drink
a little bit.
You'll drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, like I think that last year tainted that a little bit, because I was drinking the Kool-Aid a lot, like being like, this roster is actually a lot better than it's performing. It's gonna come together at some point and just stick like that. But yeah, it's tainted a little bit, but I'm still kind of like a Cashman guy.
The Kool-Aid doesn't taste as good as it did a year ago.
Yeah, it doesn't taste as good right now.
Yeah. So are you expecting? Okay, let's kind of like go through the, what might happen in this offseason. So there's the Yankees don't do a lot of moves, which is like, let's say, and this is going to sound terrible and really spoiled as a Yankee fan, but like they sign Seager and they don't do anything else. And like maybe they bring back Rizzo, which I think is like kind of just like bringing back a very similar team. Center field, they bring back like a Gardner type, and they're like, yeah, we'll put Hicks, Gardner, and Florial in center. We're bringing back Sanchez, put Seager at shortstop, or Correa at shortstop, and we're gonna trade Voit, and we're gonna bring in Rizzo, and we'll do that. That's kind of like the Yankees make a tweak. And then there's the 2009 approach, where it's like, no, we're going for broke. We thought we could do this whole, sustain a winner type thing the past few years with like a really good core of players. Well, your core stinks. Other than Judge, like Stanton is good, but he never played until this year. LeMahieu stopped hitting. Gleyber Torres has been bad for the last 2 years. Gary Sanchez can't hit and he can't catch. Hicks is always hurt. Like the team didn't perform. So that's off the table. You've got 2 years left of Aaron Judge before he hits free agent, or 1 year left of Aaron Judge before he hits free agency. Stanton's not going to be a great player for that much longer. I mean, he's getting older. So you're kind of running out of time with him. Is he really going to be an MVP guy when he's 35 years old? LeMahieu's getting older. Garrett Cole, how much longer is he going to be an ace type pitcher? I mean, you're already going into year 3 of Garrett Cole. So, I kind of look at this as you could make some tweaks, add here, add there, make the team, a little bit better. Maybe you're a 95 win team next year with Seager and Rizzo, or you go for broke and you say, look, we haven't won a World Series since 2009. We kind of missed this window with this core of players. We need to win, and we're going to do it 09 style, which is bring in some major pieces. We're going to trade for Matt Olson. We're going to sign Starling Marte, and we're going to sign Carlos Correa. Like, we're making this lineup. We're actually going to create that Death Star that Brian Cashman talks about, and it's kind of funny because like the team's never really been a Death Star. So like he's like, I think this is our Death Star move. It's like, okay, you're going to win 92 games this year and lose in the wild card game. So nice Death Star, man. But so of the two approaches, which what's the sense that you have for what they're going to do? Because I've heard both.
Yeah, I think that previously the last few years were like the years where they thought they were one piece away, so they kind of just made a little tweak. And I think it's to the point now where Cashman realizes like his job's a little bit on the line now. It's like I wouldn't be surprised if Hal Steinbrenner, even though I feel like Cashman has a lot of the say in the room, but I think that Steinbrenner's kind of like, all right, we actually got to win now, and we got to stop like with what's been going on the last few years where we're just not good enough kind of thing. So I think that Cashman like senses that he has to win soon, and whatever he's done previously in the last 4 years just hasn't been working out. So I think he's gonna do whatever he can to put as many all-stars in the field as possible, which means that they're going to acquire, I think, like either Correa or Seager. I think they're going to get Olson, and then in center field, I don't know if that means that they go for Marte then if they trade for Olson, or if they try and make a move for like Kettle Marte, or if they like really go nuts and they get Brian Reynolds, that would be like unbelievable. I don't know whether to expect that or not, but I think they're going to do something like that. And then they're also going to try and add a starting pitcher. And I think they're going to add a few relief pitchers too. I don't know if they're going to try and move like Aroldis Chapman or something. I don't know if that's even in the realm of possibility, but I think they're going to make some bullpen moves and add at least one starting pitcher. And then they're going to get new replacements at those 3 positions that we spoke about, and potentially catcher too.
So you think they're going to make a lot of moves?
I think they're going to make a lot of moves, yeah.
Because it was kind of interesting, because if you listen to the Michael Kay show, which I catch every now and then, like over the course of the year and talking like up until the trade deadline, the callers would call up and be like, you got to trade Torres, you got to trade Sanchez and LeMahieu, and like, break up the team. He kept saying, they're not going to break up the team. They're not going to break up the team. And like, it's kind of at the point where if you don't break up the team, like you're going to win 87 games next year. Like you just are.
Yeah. And Cashman senses the window's closing. So I think he's going to do like what the 09 thing was, where you just add as much as you can right now and just try and plug every hole with every best option out there and just go for it this year. That's what I think he's going to do.
I think you have to do that. I think if you don't do that, you can't, you can't expect to win a championship. You're kind of just one of those teams that's like putting their name in the hat, where it's like, yeah, we're going to win some games and we're going to be competitive. And there's a, good chance we'll make the playoffs, but we're not a team that anybody's afraid to play. We're not a team that you are like, they'll definitely win around. Like this team, the whole year you were, other than when they won 13 games in a row, the whole year you were kind of like, well, they're all right. Like they could go, like, I mean, the Braves went on a run, the Nationals went on a run, like it happens, but you're kind of like, the chance of that happening is like 5%. Like you can't, and that's why at the end of this year, I don't think I was super disappointed because I didn't really think that the team was that good.
Yeah, the team was weird this year for sure. I just think Cashman previously has been like, yeah, we just need to make a sly move here and there in the off season. And he's been like very slow with his moves, like more methodical almost. And so far this off season, he's come out and he's basically said, we're looking for center fielders. We're looking at shortstops and we're going to look, I don't know if he specifically mentioned first. I know he specifically mentioned potentially catcher too, and adding some, and pitching. He's always looking for starting pitching, looking for some bullpen. So he's being like vocal about moves. I think he's going to make some major moves. He knows he has to do it now. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. And like last offseason was brutal. And I think that, when Cashman's going to like sit back a little bit based on the way his interviews go. And he's a lot more aggressive so far this offseason, which is nice.
I don't think that they believed in the results of the 2020 season.
Yeah, they didn't. You could tell.
I think that they were kind of like, yeah, whatever. Like Gleyber Torres didn't hit, but like he's a superstar. Like he'll be fine. Gary Sanchez is not a 150 hitter. Like he's a 230 hitter who's going to bomb 30 homers a year. Like I think that they kind of just wrote off 2020,
and they
which a lot
injuries.
of teams did. And
they thought that we just need to get our guys healthy and we'll be good. And they actually kind of did a lot better job this year. Like Stanton and Judge were around like the whole season for the most part. And they actually just they underperformed. A lot of guys just underperformed. So
a lot of guys just played bad. I mean,
so now they know.
LeMahieu had a bad year. Gleyber Torres had a bad year. Like Voit didn't stay on the field and he wasn't that great when he played. Urshela had a really mediocre year. Like basically everybody except for Judge and Stanton had bad years.
Yeah, basically. Yeah,
they pitched.
Disappointing.
Though,
yeah, they
pitched. Unusual.
Yeah, they overperformed in pitching for sure.
Yeah, relief pitching. I think that the Yankees are the one thing that I'll give them credit for is I think that they're the best team in baseball at finding relief pitchers.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think that's also another reason that they wouldn't really have to go and trade a very good player or like a guy that could be very good for like a relief pitcher, just because they're very good at finding relief pitchers and developing relief pitching. It's starting pitching that's a little bit of an issue with them.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because everyone was always talking about this year, Garrett Whitlock. They're like, how could they let Garrett Whitlock go? Like, I'm like, they like have a Garrett Whitlock like every other year for them.
Yeah, they do.
Like seriously, every relief pitcher that comes to the team is their only position that they do this with. Loizaga, he's filthy. Clay Holmes is unbelievable. Like the Yankees will bring over guys and they're just really good.
Yeah. And I think that Clay Holmes actually had the highest WAR of any guy they acquired this like during the trade deadline, which is crazy.
He was throwing like 99 mile an hour sinkers. Like you're not gonna hit that.
But they had to give up Park for him, which is disappointing.
I think it was John Boy that was calling out Yankee fans. He was like, "You're embarrassing yourselves. Stop acting like Park was going to be the next Derek Jeter. Like you sound like an idiot."
He had set Yankee Twitter on fire when they traded Park for Clay Holmes.
He was like an unknown prospect who like had a good April and May and June, and everyone like just lost their minds because they traded him for Holmes. And John Boy, he was just so funny. He was like, "You guys, you're embarrassing yourselves."
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else that you want to get to before we wrap things up?
I just think the Yanks, like what we were talking about, they got to make some big moves this offseason, and they know that they have to do it now, which is nice. Like rather than what we've seen previously where they're a little cocky about it and think they just need like a sly move here and there. So I'm hoping that this offseason will be pretty fun. The one thing that'll kind of stink is that there's going to be a lockout probably in like a month.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that might impact it for a few months. Are we expecting that to really impact the season much, or is that do you think that'll wrap up somewhat quickly?
I don't think it's going to impact the season. What I heard is that there's going to be the lockout, and then like right around the beginning of February is when they're going to come to a deal. And then anybody that's not signed between now and I think it's December 1st or 3rd or something like that. It's going to kind of be like an NBA, NFL, like free agent frenzy.
Which should be fun.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. But I mean, it's going to be all CBA talk for 2 months.
Yeah, that'll be annoying. But I don't think a lot of baseball fans are prepared for that yet. Like, it's not really being talked about as much as you would think. How annoying that's going to be.
No, I think it's going to be very annoying. But a lockout is different than a strike. Obviously,
yeah,
a strike, you lose games. I don't think they're going to lose any games now because I don't think that I don't think that it's going to be worth it for either side to just like kind of like blow it all up. But one of the things that I heard about the players is that a lot of guys don't like waiting. A lot of free agents don't like waiting until February to sign. So some of them might be willing to risk getting a lesser deal to sign in the next 2 weeks. So I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. But I think most of the players will probably get signed in the first couple of weeks of February. So it'll be like we have free agency and then spring training starting. Like that's I think how it's going to happen.
And hopefully the A's are just down to deal before this lockout. Like, hopefully they just want to get it all out of the way, and then we could see what happens with Olson and their starting pitchers, and see if the Yankees can get somebody before this lockout. Like, that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, like if the Yankees went out and like next week they trade for Matt Olson or like they trade for Brian Reynolds, like I think that if they make one of those moves, it's gonna be one of those things where we're in 2009 offseason. Right?
Yeah,
they're gonna make like if they go out and they sign a shortstop, I'll be like, okay, like that had to happen type thing. But if they go out and they start making moves we don't like really expect them to definitely make, then I think we're gonna be in for it.
Yeah. So hopefully that happens. I want a fun off season and a better baseball season.
Yeah. I want a better 2022.
Yeah.
But I think it was a good first podcast for the 2021-22 off season. We'll try to do this once a week where we just talk Yankees or just talk baseball. Tomorrow night we're going to have the podcast with Zach. It's going to be baseball, but it'll be a little bit different. So it's always a little different with him, but
should be fun.
Yeah, it should be fun. All right. So we'll probably talk next week, see if there's any moves that have been made. And fingers crossed something happens positive with the CBA.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
All right, Kenny. We'll talk later.
Sounds good.
All right,
good conversation there. Have a good one.
You too.